He has spent decades bringing raw and unfiltered performances directly to street corners, village squares, and schoolyards across South Asia, which tackle real-world issues which most people just try to avoid in today's generation.
In cinema, you do also have these same emotions, but those emotions are evoked by a performance. In theatre, it's happening real time and it's happening along with the performance. Why would I dim the lights like a cinema hall and now say, hello, my play is starting?
So I would like to start off by looking at an artistic dilemma, which is art meant to disturb the comfortable, or is it made to comfort the disturbed?
It's probably somewhere in between. Definitely disturb the comfortable, but more importantly, to arouse the comfortable. More often than not, in our art, in our theatre, in our visual art, we try to maintain the status quo. We try to maintain what offends and what doesn't. Art in itself is not meant to offend. At the same point of time, if it doesn't leave some fundamental questions, however unpopular they might be, it tends to be a little more propaganda and less art, or just aesthetics and no art. So art definitely is meant to disturb the comfortable, but I think more importantly, to arouse the comfortable, sometimes into shame and sometimes into action.
That's really fascinating to hear. So you have also directed many plays and theatrical work on heavy and raw issues. To name a few, uranium contamination, human trafficking, and even some conflict zones. So when an audience steps into a performance space, what should art, according to you, do to that person sitting in that room?
See, firstly, when I look at performance, fundamentally, theatre starts from the time you approach the space. For example, if this is a podcast room, to me a podcast starts when you are in the corridor, walking to enter the room, and you've not entered the room itself. So theatre is like an experience where the journey to the auditorium, where sitting on the stage, where the lights get dimmed or there are no lights at all, depending on the nature of the performance, space of the performance, theatre starts there. Now, it's a matter of personal choice. I disagree with the theatre. I don't disrespect, let me repeat the word, I disagree with the theatre, where now especially somebody enters the Audi, lights come down, a music plays, a curtain goes up, and a play starts. It seems that now you will see a show. In my theatre, at least what I try to, when I specially produce or direct myself, theatre begins as soon as you enter the Audi. You could see maybe a person rehearsing. You could probably see a human statue. You could see somebody whispering. You could see maybe a character underneath the seat. You may see some of the characters strewn across the auditorium. The curtain opening and the light getting down, to me, is a start of play, not a theatrical process. So, I think the power that theatre has over cinema, and I'm not comparing theatre with cinema, they are completely different mediums, but the power that theatre has is tactility and experience. You can feel it in your hands, you can feel it in your shoulders, you can feel it in your teardrops, you can feel it in your anger, and you experience all of it very tactically along with another guy standing in the space. In cinema, you do also have these same emotions, but those emotions are evoked by a performance. In theatre, it's happening real time and it's happening along with the performance. So to me, why would a performance start? Performance has already started when you've entered the auditorium. Why would I dim the lights like a cinema hall and now say, hello, my play is starting? So technically, that's the first thing I try to ensure, that as soon as you step into the space, A space may be Audi, it may be a small room, it can be a big room, it can be a multimedia room, it can be a village square, it can be a city square, it can be a footpath, it can be a chalk. But whenever you are entering a certain zone, your feeling of the performance, your experience of the performance, your feel of the performance already starts. I've been successful in some occasions. I've not been successful in some occasions to evoke the same template, but that's okay. The idea has been you've got to feel the space of the play. In my play, space is a character and not just the hero and the heroine. So, in a nutshell, I would think the folding and unfolding of the space. For example, there's a large room, and one of my characters is sitting in one end of the room, crouched, and there is a small beam of light on that person, and the whole room is empty. It doesn't have any fixed seating plan. So an audience can walk up to the room and can stand next to that guy or the girl. The audience can stand at other end of the room and look at the person. The audience can go super close and look at the person. The audience can be a little far off and look at the person. I don't tell the audience, this is seat number 1A, this is seat number 12B, this is seat number 6C. The audience can experience that person at one end of the room. So it goes on to the audience's head. Itna bada space hai. Such a big space. Why is that boy crouched in one side of the room? Why is that girl kind of crouched in one side of the room? And then the boy and the girl start speaking. Boy or the girl start speaking. And she speaks about claustrophobia. He speaks about claustrophobia, shrinking spaces. And then you realize that the claustrophobia that she's talking about, is not about acting. In real space also, when you're wasting such a lot of space in the whole space, and that person is sitting there at one corner, you're actually making the audience feel the claustrophobia. He doesn't have to act the claustrophobia out. He's visually showing you claustrophobia. To me, in that kind of theatre, you become a spectator, not a spectator. You become a co-participant. You become a co-creator. You take part in the play as much as the actor do. You may not have dialogues, but you are part of that creation. You are part of that claustrophobia. An actor doesn't have to be a great actor and evoke great emotions to show claustrophobia to you, because you can feel his or her claustrophobia from that corner space where he shrunk into and not using the entire space. Claustrophobia becomes real. It becomes palpable. So that kind of tools, I am honestly a little more comfortable doing in my theatre. To make somebody uncomfortable, not uncomfortable per se, in the hospitality sense of the term, but uncomfortable per se because it breaks the audience's rhythm. It doesn't make them come, sit down, experience theatre. Here, the person has to walk up, or stay in a corner, or be in a safe distance, or come closer. The person says, where do I stand? Mostly in theatre, you don't ask yourself, where do I stand? You stand where your ticket number is. You sit where your ticket number is. In this case, you don't do that. You're given the democracy of sitting, standing, experiencing. Well, that's one of the methods I think I employ in my theatre to evoke the physicality of theatre.
That's an amazing perspective indeed, sir. Sir, you've also judged multiple format debates over the years, ranging from turncoats to visual linkage extempore, and even standard Cambridge formats. Which one of these specifically, according to you, really tests a speaker's real intellect instead of just testing how well they can speak or iterate a polished speech?
See, first of all, the word judging I'm uncomfortable with. Maybe I'm a senior collaborator. You're only judged by the Almighty. You're nobody to judge anybody. Nor do I give marks, nor do I give any grades when I am collaborating on a debate. I would refrain from using the word judging and evaluation because you really can't judge somebody. But yeah, when I am kind of taking part as a senior collaborator in the debate, the format that I like most is called Lincoln and Douglas. It began with Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, 1:1. In a competition, 1:1 doesn't happen. Some schools do it 2:2, some 3:3. So it's like one speaker, somebody asking questions from the second team, then their speaker, somebody asks questions from the first team. I like Lincoln Douglas as a format more. Maybe the debates you're talking about are debates in a conclave where just debate doesn't take place, many events takes place. But standalone debates, which are only debates and nothing else. If you look at that context, well, I think I prefer as a format Lincoln Douglas more than the ones you said. Because I think the questioning part is not an interjection, it's inbuilt into the format of the debate.
That's really interesting of a format, sir, indeed. So now when we take a look back, when we retrace our steps, how did your early family life and your childhood, your upbringing, shape this restless curiosity which you have, this spark that you have in you?
See, much more than family, school, college, life, all of which are important and very, very important building blocks for your evolution. I think one of the biggest roles that kind of shaped my life is the city of Calcutta. Calcutta is a remarkable city. You love it, you hate it. You can't ignore the city. Everybody will say that about their own city. But let me say this about Calcutta, that for all that I'm delighted by the distance from Calcutta, still when the flight touches down in the Dum airport or the train comes into the Howrah station, you feel like coming home. And home here is not the house where I live in. Home is the city that has taken you under their bosom. So I think Calcutta is a remarkable city in terms of cultural osmosis. If you ask somebody in Calcutta his profession, and he says he's a poet, it's not automatically considered as a loser. Acha kuch nahi hua, he's a poet. Not at all. In fact, the other person will say, oh, you're a poet.
Right.
Let's have a coffee. Now, the let's have a coffee will not come from the perspective that poet hai, pocket mein paisa nahi hai. Let me pay for his coffee. It's in the reverse. Somebody would like to pay for a coffee for the poet for the simple reason that I'll hear a completely different perspective. I know numerous taxi rides where the taxiwala has discussed Cuba to Sudan to Yemen with me, and he has an opinion. I may agree or disagree with the opinion, but a simple taxiwala has an opinion about the world. He has a take. One may agree or disagree. So I think this fluidity of education, that everybody experiences their literacy in their own ways. Nobody is this so-called I know it all. This cultural fluidity, diversity, osmosis, photosynthesis, this cultural passing on is remarkable in Calcutta. In Calcutta's theatre, in Calcutta's music, in Calcutta's dance, in Calcutta's numerous little magazines where people probably earn 5 rupees and spends 3 rupees bringing out a magazine. He may not have enough to eat, but he brings out a small magazine every year. In terms of a remarkable institution a little diluted nowadays, called the Calcutta Book Fair. I may have missed many Durga Pujas, many Durga Pujas. In whichever city I'm in India, during a Durga Puja, I go and see the Durga Puja. If I'm in Mumbai, I go to Shivaji Park. If I'm in Delhi, I'll go to CR Park. If I'm in Hyderabad, maybe I'll catch up with the Durga Puja in Jubilee Hills. I may have seen Durga Puja in different parts of the country. But I try not to miss and never to miss Calcutta Book Fair. Calcutta Book Fair is a remarkable celebration of books.
Absolutely.
So I think this city, I owe a lot to this city. I have a lot of anger with Calcutta. But you're only angry with people you love. Yeah.
That's a great perspective, sir. Sir, we are moving on into a rapid fire round where we'll ask you a few questions and you'll have to answer quickly, right?
Yeah.
What would your official title be if you weren't doing what you're doing right now?
Ideally, knowledge resource curator, and not so ideally, aimless nomad.
All right. Are you a night owl or an early bird?
No question, night owl.
Night owl.
Yeah.
Okay. For or against 3D or 2D movie?
Analog, never digital.
Why?
Because I would like to see the human in the movie, like a Christopher Nolan, than a CGI camera. I'm not a Final Cut Pro guy. I'm a guy with old-fashioned editing.
Wow. Okay. Which is one most overused word in your vocabulary?
Old bad habit, basically.
Basically. All right. Which is one book which you would recommend today's youth to read?
1984. If they haven't read it, they should read it 5 times. 1984 by George Orwell.
George Orwell. Okay.
So, we wanted to take a look at your trajectory. Journalism, alternative theatre, debates, and quizzes. All of them are such completely distinct worlds on the surface. But at their core, they seem to demand the same thing: active engagement. So, in your opinion, what is the invisible thread that joins all these different domains together?
Well, I think from the different genres that you mentioned, debate, of course, is a very fundamental mother genre because it's there in everything that we do. But I think what joins all of this is my work in visual arts curation, something which is very close to my heart and probably closest to my heart. A curator is this unique creature in the zoo. He works with an artist for years. And then when he curates a show, he knows the journey of the artist from his struggling days, his days of finding his voice. When I mean struggling, I don't mean financially struggling. That is always there as part and parcel of life. I'm saying about he's trying to find a language, what makes him different from others. And finally, finding a certain kind of voice, and then finally, resisting market forces and not painting or drawing or sculpting or doing visual art installation, which sells. I'm not saying an artist should not sell, but if what sells is what the artist is working on, then probably at a very fundamental core, his own artistic vision gets compromised. So I think visual arts remains the most common thread because it taught me debating in colors. It taught me the idea of representation. It taught me how nuances of the human body can be represented in a sculptural form without really photographing it or scanning it. So I think visual arts is the common thread to all, because I think it did a lot to decolonize my mind. I wouldn't say I'm totally decolonized. I would like to be, but visual arts definitely uncluttered my mind. I'm most comfortable when I am hanging a painting in an art gallery, putting a public art in the road, arranging installation, reorganizing installation, installing myself, encouraging young children like you to install more. Take art out of the gallery and make it a public art people can feel and touch and not feel overawed like the gallery walls. I think that's where I think the thread joins. It sets me free. It tells me that much more than words, there are other forms and formats through which you can represent stories in the world to people much, much larger than whom you imagine in numbers. A visual art can travel on a click of a button nowadays. Before that, maybe just a photograph. It can travel two places. Every revolution, every happening is ultimately that one undying photograph, painting, sculpture that has stayed back. We may think it's by the way, but when we remember every major movement of the world or every major happening in the world, there is that one image that sticks in our mind. And I think that part of the image is something that we underestimate. So yeah, visual arts.
Yeah. Visual arts is really powerful, and passion should never really be compromised for anything. What something I find fascinating about you is that whether you're standing behind a podium with a quiz grid or you're breaking the fourth wall with a site specific play, you really never let people play the passive consumer. You've always been about theatre and quizzing being about not just handing out neat answers, but about pushing people to look closer, think deeper, be introspective. So, if we carry that same ethos back to the podium, as a quiz master, what is some advice which you've repeatedly given to students that they just completely ignore most often of the time?
See, I think whenever you are asking questions and taking replies and sharing a piece of fact and expecting the piece of fact to be recalled if it's a question as an answer, in that entire exchange, I think sometimes we tend to give a lot of importance to memory. The how do we recall an answer? How do we work out an answer? How do we work out clues to come to an answer? I think sometimes we kind of tend to think that asking questions and replying is a memory game. I think where we go wrong, including me, is I think there is a beauty or a power of hearing the guesses which may not be the right answer, and then you get the right answer. If you decode the guess of every wrong answer, if you decode the guess of something which is very tantalizingly close to the right answer, what is not the right answer? I think the beauty of such a guess is you will see how differently different human minds think. For example, if you're talking about, say, a French connection to a place, and the answer is probably Bordeaux or Paris or Versailles, and somebody, by mistake, kind of not being able to join the dots, said Pondicherry. Now, Pondicherry is a French colony also. It's nowhere close to the right answer. And the guy was not clear which French place is being asked in the question. But you can also see a very interesting lateral thinking at work. He's looking at different French colonial outposts in the world. Just because it's France, he's not giving a French name. French name, of course. What I mean to say is not a French geographical name. He's looking at the larger footprint, where the French colonies are, and then choosing to say Pondicherry. Now, apparently it's a wrong answer. But it's also showing how remarkable or how agile that mind is trying to work out the possibilities. So I think if there is anything that we take back from a question-answer game is the possibilities of human mind in working out the probability of the answer. I think that's the beauty. That's the beauty of the sport. It cannot be this slam dunk buzzer game where you are constantly testing against time how much you know or how much you don't know. I don't think that's the beauty of the sport, the mind sport. The beauty is the possibilities that somebody crosses before he makes a guess. I think that journey is what makes question answer so fascinating a format. If we were to enjoy the journey and not get obsessed with that one right answer.
So, if you had the freedom to make your own version of a competition to say, how would you format it? Since you've already said that in quizzing it's just about memorization, people get obsessed with the fact that you have to have a question and have an answer with it. If you could format your own version of a competition which explores how the human mind works without having this reward punishment scheme of marking, how would you do it?
See, I would not have very watertight boxes of different events. I would like somebody who debates on a particular topic to also tell about five unknown trivia about that topic. Then I would like maybe a second in a two-member team, a visual artist, to paint that topic. I would like the third member of the team to make a short film on the topic. I would like the fourth member of the team to probably make a visual poster bringing out the crux of the topic. I would like the fifth member of the team to write a monologue on the topic. I would like the sixth member of the team to be a researcher. I think somewhere down the line, we've made the events so watertight and stratified. Even though we talk about big things like multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary, in a very practical ground level format of cultural transmission, we don't do it. So I would love when somebody debates on a topic, somebody paints on that debate, somebody sculpts on that debate, somebody gives 5 facts about that debate, somebody shoots a short film on that debate, and somebody who looks at that debate from 17 different angles. Then this is a debate, that is a short film, this is an art installation, this is a buzzer round, this is a reality show, this is a, what do you call it, storytelling round, this is a model making round. I think somewhere down the line, the initial purpose of knowing the information from different angles, that gets lost. Sometimes when we cross-check a lot of news, we find something is a fake news. Why do we call it fake news? Because we've checked from different sources to say that, this is the news. This is where you've twisted the news. Now, why did the twist happen? Because you never really explored that news, or the perspective, or the one-sidedness of that news. If we were to approach culture from so many multi-dimensions, such a thing would have never happened. So maybe if I were to get out of market expectations and devise something, I would take something as simple or complex like a debate. Debate is just an example. It could be a visual art. And then do 7 events around it. Then do 7 different events to have a first, second, third. Yeah.
So, in the age of Google and AI, everybody thinks they're so smart because facts are just a click away. In a world drowning with instant data, where does the line lie between simply knowing things and possessing real wisdom to understand it? Is true intellectual ability about understanding the issue at its core, and having the guts to improvise with it, or being structured, well read, and being able to explain it to other people?
The field part of the story becomes a little less important than the skill imbibed. So sometimes we are not, we don't get our calling very easily. We don't get into the core of the issue so easily because the field is one missing element. For example, you may have learned Odissi dance all your life. You went to a guru in Bombay or Thane or Kalyan and learned Odissi. Lovely, a very interesting dance form. Different layers to it, like classical dance forms are. The point here is, do we have the time, space, and sometimes the intention of being taken to Odisha and look at the geographies, look at the temples, look at the young boys who are Gotipua artists, the rock carvings, the temple carvings, specific geographical coordinates from where Odissi is inspired. Now, till we don't have that field study, and maybe we are learning Odissi at the side, along with our school life or college life or university life or work life. It's not principled to us. So we are saying, okay, it's a time pass, it's a hobby. I love doing it. I find myself. All that is fine. But the contextual nature of where did the dance come from, which geography shaped it, that's very, very important. And sometimes, or more often than not, that's missing. We learn it because of the decorative part of the dance. We learn it because it looks good on stage. We learn it because our parents who may be interested in dance kind of nudged us and say, why don't you learn this dance form? Sometimes we learn it, dance as one of the subjects for mark sheets. Sometimes we learn it for an extra diploma apart from what we are doing. But in all that, what is the ethos of Odissi? From which soil does it come? From which geography does it come? Suppose I'm reading about Bahadur Shah Zafar. He's exiled. And I really want to understand the nature of the exile. So he was exiled in Rangoon, Burma, where we have the memorial of Bahadur Shah Zafar and his mortal remains. Now, interestingly, the Burmese king was exiled in Ratnagiri, where you have the King Thibaw Palace. Now, immediately I may not have the time to go to Rangoon all the way. But it's not rocket science from a Bombay, Thane or Kalyan to go to Ratnagiri. And if you go to Ratnagiri and you look at King Thibaw's palace, all of a sudden that history becomes real to you. You don't go to Ratnagiri just to have mangoes. You also go there to experience history. So all of a sudden that becomes real to you, tangible to you. Now you learning about Bahadur Shah Zafar. Now you learning about King Thibaw. They don't look that distant a figure like your historical narratives are. So sometimes, more often than not sometimes, I think all the time, our field understanding gets divorced from our mad rat race of acquiring skills, from learning a subject. Somewhere down the line, I think we are too globalized. We are all in a hurry. We all have zeros in debit cards to add to become financially independent in that huge rat race where we're just a rat. We tend to ignore the power of a field observation. We tend to learn way too much of text with way less feeling. So I think It's the absence of the field that's that bothers me. Not that I haven't seen everything in the field, but at least I'm traveling to catch up for the lost time.
When you speak of rat races, if we there's a saying that is jack of all trades but master of none, but still better than a master of one. So in this era where having multiple skills is does looks so much better on a portfolio than it does to just say I am the greatest at this one skill. How what would you tell the students of this era? How do we learn certain subjects in a way that we can have this field research while still being good at what we do, having the portfolio to look forward to a good future?
See, portfolio itself is a is a byproduct of the market, where sometimes you are reduced to a QR code, where sometimes you are as good as the printout that you have typed. Portfolio itself is something which I find a very, very limited concept because it limits you down to a few pages as opposed to who you are, which is far more interesting, far more complex, far more mixture of happy and sadness than what your portfolio is. I think there is no mix between the portfolio and field. It is a fact that portfolio has won, and to a larger extent, fieldwork has lost. Except somebody is doing a PhD and is doing fieldwork, then he is compelled to do a fieldwork. वो अलग बात है. So in some way, portfolio has won, fieldwork has lost. But I think all is not lost, because if you were to be good at what you are, more than good, humane, productive, skilled but yet full of kindness and empathy, willing to work with community, willing to give some time to the field, not be obsessed about just wealth accumulation, however important that might be. If you were to cultivate a little bit of kindness, harvest kindness, then I think what would be important is, I think there's a generational calling for different children, different young adults, maybe with you also, maybe with people of your age group, people of your generation, that let's go to a completely different field. Now, I'm not saying every travel influencer is really a travel aficionado. Some are doing it purely for the YouTube money. I'm not saying every photographer is someone who takes deep interest in photography. But many do. They're photographing a community over 20 years. They're photographing a mountain for 40 years. I think we've come to a very interesting, restless generation which is trying to invent professions. We are failing wonderfully. But in that failure lies the grand success of a generation which is not just typically into engineering, medicine, filmmaking, law, but working in the cross sections. I think for the first time in human history, there are way too many people who would take their calling and be in sports management. Not everybody is managing a World Cup. Somebody is taking a calling and saying that, okay, I would like to monetize my travel photography. Somebody is saying that I will not do a typical product shoot. I would like to just catalog indigenous art and crafts. Somebody else is saying that I would like to do some community law. I would like to fight court cases 4 days a week for marginalized people who can't afford it. Somebody is saying I would like to be a community doctor. I would not be obsessed with big money and big nursing homes and big hospitals. I'm not saying they are huge numbers, but I think many are also seeing how much we are being reduced to a QR code every day, just because we have to fit into a template of a profession. I'm trying to do an alternative theatre for a living. Successful or failure is secondary, irrelevant. Of course, I have to earn a living to, put food in my stomach, put water in my throat. But it's not about me. I think the generation which is younger than me is doing way better than I am. They're way more courageous than I am. I think they have a far more open outlook than mine is in trying to be good at what they are, yet not take up the exact profession they are expected to. I think those are the guys who has a great portfolio and who is not chasing great money. And I think they are great minds. And if they fail, their failures are better than success stories. And if they fail very badly and they pick themselves up, their resilience is far better than heroes coming out in movies and podcasts. And in their risk, in their adventure, I think they're holding out a lesson for us as adults. That did you do enough to risk things? Or when it came to real risks, you all chickened out. So I think much that people put your generation down, sometimes for valid reasons. There are way too many reasons to also look up to that generation. I work with that generation, so I don't think I'm going to get old. I'm going to remain young because the risks of those generations, they're doing exactly what you're saying. They're good at something. They have their portfolio, but they're not walking the path that the portfolio wants them to take. They're junking that portfolio and saying, how about doing this? I salute their failure much more than I like other successes.
Thank you. That was amazing, and I don't think we could have asked for a better note to end on. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with us?
No, I think just the fact that in a school context, you're having spaces for open conversations. You're recording these conversations down like archive, like an audio archive, like a visual archive. And these conversations with various people from various walks of life will reflect so much of diversity. I think this kind of conversations, as a final thought, just makes me say that we don't have a choice but to uphold diversity. Sometimes the world is getting monochrome. At the time I'm doing this podcast, 7 wars are being fought across the world. Kids can't access schools because all their schools have been bombed. Kids can't access universities because all the universities are bombed. Theatre makers cannot access their theatre because getting their next bread is the challenge, or even a glass of mineral water, or glass of any water for that matter. Theatre to dur ki baat hai. Their spaces are bombed. But with remarkable resilience, they're still blogging, Instagramming, bringing out conflict realities, knowing that the next bomb will fall on their heads. So I think there's a lesson out there. How long will you flex your muscle and say, I'm stronger than you? The strongest in this world have always lost to kindness. Kindness takes some time, but it wins. May not win in my lifetime, but will win in all lifetimes. So I think There's no final message. There's a final sharing. Be a little more kind. I don't care if you're successful or not.
Okay. So, on behalf of the entire Birla School team, we would like to thank you, Parnab sir, for your uncompromising honesty, time, and you've honestly challenged us to look past the prepackaged narratives that we so easily accept in this era, whether it be fake news, fake social media, God knows what else we read in whatever we come across. And to everybody watching, stay curious, stay uncomfortable, keep questioning, and don't forget to ignite your inner spark. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you for watching.